Hello, welcome to my morning coffee with Pandasilly and sing, sing for the cloud. Singing in the clouds is what I'm calling the Panda Ridge. What do I do in my morning coffee? This is a morning blog for me to you. And we got the panda sleeping up there on the Panda Ridge. And then we got the other panda looking over. Stay and peek. And then we got Victor Davis Hanson in the background because I'm going to listen to that one. So enjoy Victor Davis Hanson while we watch the pandas.
Is it? I had the picture of when he says fight, 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 with the blood. But they felt that for a variety of reasons they didn't want that, the publisher. So they picked the one where he's going like this, pointing at someone.
Oh, whatever. Tell us the title again. What is going to be the official title?
Counter Revolution. The fall and rise of Trump and his MAGA movement.
Okay, folks, you heard that. Go on Amazon when it's up.
It's the first half of the book starts at January 6th. And it goes through all the polls and what everybody said about him, and that the consensus that he was all through what Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley were polling at. He was completely written off, and then the series of events, the E. Jean Carroll, the Fannie Willis, the Latita James, the Alvin Bragg, the Jack Smith, the getting him off the ballot, the Mar-a-Lago raid, and examines all those in detail. I think I have some new stuff in there too. And then it says, and then as I describe that, the second half of each of those chapters is how he rises in the polls.
Yeah.
The mugshot helps him. Everything helps him. And he puts DeSantis and Haley in a very strange position, because if they criticize the lawfare against him, then they're aiding his cause. But if they say that he brought it on himself, then they are termed on the left side, leftist. So it really made their candidacies, I don't know if it was by design, it was hard to say it was by design, but Trump adroitly was able to frame it that he said, if they think that I deserve it, then they're on their side. And so when they said he doesn't deserve this, Nikki Haley tried to kind of square the circle and say, well, what they're doing to him is unfair, but he should have never been in the position where they were able to do that. That didn't work.
Yeah.
And then I start in with the primaries, and then the campaign, why Harris lost, and then I try to do his first term from January 21st to December 31st, 2025. I couldn't really update
Yeah.
because it was already in press when the war, for example, happened.
Yeah. Well, it'd be a nonstop book in that case, but to me, that Mar-a-Lago raid was just bridged too far, even for people who wouldn't necessarily like it.
It's almost juxtaposition simultaneously with Joe Biden, and he had taken these documents out for 30 years, and unlike the president, he had no discretion to declassify any of them. And then the worst of it was, he had a ghostwriter, had no security clearance, and he's on tape discussing classified material. And then the speechwriter knows that when Robert Hur's appointed, and then he erases it all.
Yeah.
And that was going to be subpoenaed. And all he says is, well, he didn't mean it. And he said, I did it so I wouldn't be hacked. That's such a lie. And then they wouldn't release the oral record, did not match the transcript. And then Jack Smith, it really helped in a weird way. It helped.
Yeah. The destruction of evidence. Hillary did it with her wiping the dry clean, the January 6th committee. What happened to all this? Yeah.
Yeah, I go through all that. The destruction of, the worst was, they said that there was massive files at Mar-a-Lago that were, they've only found 102 papers. They took 13,000 out of the house. 102, and then they came with labels. They came prepared with labels, and they stuck them on the 102. It said classified.
Yeah.
And then they scattered them on the floor and took a picture of it. And that was not the way. And then they went into, Melania's drawers and everything. It was, then you juxtapose that, with Mar-a-Lago, they'd have a security booth that you can't get in. And then you look at Joe Biden's garage with all that stuff. It was really weird
things on top of classified documents.
The second half of the book is the rise of Donald Trump, and it goes through the campaign in detail, and then the first year. And boy, researching that, I saw it firsthand, but as everybody else did, but I didn't realize until I started how just inept Kamala Harris was.
Yeah. She did 45 days, right? Without dealing with
5 days, she wouldn't talk to anybody. And then when she did, you know why she didn't.
Trump at the McDonald's and Trump on the garbage truck were just two.
Hundreds of millions of dollars in free advertising, and then she ended up having to pay, I think it was Cardi B and Al Sharpton and Oprah. She was paying them money for the interview.
Another interview, some influencer, I forget her name. Not that I ever remembered it, but they built her set.
Yeah, that was right. That was $150,000 fake set.
Well,
there was so much in there, I couldn't get it all in. The book has, I don't know how many gosh, I guess I got over 800 or 900 footnotes, 700. But I started it when I was ill a year ago. I started in March, and boy, that was hard to write because I knew something was wrong, but when I was writing it, I never had any idea that it was cancer. So I kind of wrote it. So when I went back and rewrote it, I could see that anyway, I hope it's in good shape now. I think people will like it.
You just mentioned, interviews Kamala Harris had. There's one she didn't have. That's with Joe Rogan. We're going to back into Joe Rogan by talking about J.D. Vance. And we've got a bunch of other topics, including munitions in Iran, a judge in San Francisco laying that murderer out, plus plenty of other stuff. But we'll get to all this in Victor's wisdom on these topics when we come back from these initial important messages.
If you enjoy Victor Davis Hanson,
the site, and he also does one exclusive video. Plus, there's tons of free stuff. It's $65 for the year, but if you want to just try it out for a month, it's $6.50 a month. You can go that route if you so desire. We are recording. I don't think I gave the dates. This is Saturday, the 28th of March, and this particular episode will be up on Tuesday, March 31st. So, Victor, let's get your thoughts about J.D. Vance, who's been much in the news the last few days, and he gets into 3 areas. 1, calling into Joe Rogan. 2, calling Netanyahu and chewing him out. And 3, publicly attacking Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman, for marrying her brother. Your thoughts on what Vance is doing and on these things in particular?
Well, he's doing what the traditional job description of a vice president is. It's to go out, take flack. Remember Spiro Agnew, anatomy, nabobs of negativity?
Negative is my thing.
Negative. Yeah, whatever. And so that's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to shield the president, take the flack, and detour his enemies. And this was a multifaceted week. So with Joe Rogan, people should remember Joe Rogan endorsed Donald Trump on the last day of the campaign. So he wasn't and he had voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary of 2020. So he was part of the entourage with RFK and Dana White and Tulsi, all those people at Madison Square Garden. So he's apolitical in one sense, but I would say that his heart is socially conservative, but maybe left-wing politically.
Victor, I don't think everybody knows essentially what he said.
Yes, what he said was 2 things. One, that he was disappointed that the supporters of Donald Trump were either unintelligent or uninformed, and they were dorks. And 2, he said that I'm going to get this straight, not Joe Biden, but Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama had secured the border and done a better job on immigration. And that's what J.D. Vance then called him. And he was quite right about that, J.D. He said, those are factually incorrect. Donald Trump inherited 12 million illegal aliens, and he has 0. On some months, he has 0 entrants. Neither Barack Obama nor what Hillary Clinton said she was going to do, nor Bill Clinton ever had 0. Both of them eventually supported mass-scale amnesties, dreamers, whatever you want to call them. Trump did not. And then more importantly, Trump deported more criminals than either one of them. It's true that before Trump's second term, Barack Obama deported more, but they counted people who were turned away at the border as deportations. And that wasn't so in Trump's cases, in every case at least. And then he addressed the dorks. And I don't know. I thought that was when he said they're unintelligent and uninformed. There's been a lot of studies that show that people who watch, say, Fox News know more about world events than CNN. That Rush Limbaugh used to quote that data all the time, and talk radio in particular. And I think, when Johnny on Jesse Waters goes out to the beach and he talks to people, or he talks to people in the street and they know nothing, I don't think he's really getting a lot of conservative people there.
Well, he's getting college students, though, so that says something about the academy.
But they're not conservative, I'll tell you that, because if he talked to people from Thomas Aquinas or Hillsdale, they would talk his head off with data and facts and analysis. So that and then he says they're dorks, but that was kind of a weird word to use because they have been libeled by the left as chumps. I'm going to say Biden called them chumps, garbage, dregs. Obama called them clingers with their guns and religion. Hillary called them deplorables and irredeemables. Those are all epithet. Mark Caputo for CNN said that there was more teeth. He had more teeth than all the people at a Trump rally. I guess it was Peter Strzok text to Lisa Page that he could smell them at Walmart. Those terms of disparagement are not dorky terms. They're kind of tough guy, or they're, you know what I mean? They like guns. I didn't know what he meant by dorks. Is that kind of like nerds or something? You could use it. When I hear these people on the left, if I wanted to be a stereotypical, if I was searching for a stereotypical characterization, I'd say they had spaghetti arms and nasal voices, or they sounded like they were in NPR. Mm-hmm. And, if you listen to talk radio and the guy is for Trump, it's, hey, everybody, I'm going to tell you. If you listen to NPR, it's, wow, it's very problematic. There's pros and cons everywhere. Now, why we're not political, I think it's by universal consent that Donald Trump tragically is the worst president in U.S. history. It's that stuff. That's Yorkie. So I don't know. So Dady called him up, and so he kind of did it lightheartedly. You got wrong on immigration and dorks. He said there's dorks in any group, but we have fewer than anybody the left. Okay. And then he made another call, right, to Netanyahu. Now that is more interesting. And supposedly he yelled at Netanyahu for providing false information that gave an unrealistically optimistic picture of the resistance that would rise up. Sort of what people during the Iraq War, I think it was Richard Pearl, said, we'll be greeted as liberators. And people got latched onto that. That was more problematic because, first of all, I don't think, and you correct me, and maybe your listeners will nod or in agreement or shake your head no, but I don't think any vice president calls a head of state without the prior permission of the president. So when he called Netanyahu and blamed him, it almost echoed what Trump inadvertently said about Pete Hegseth. He said he's the one that really wanted to go in. And that suggests to me that Trump feels like he thought it was going to be a 3-week rather than, I think it'll be a 6-week. We're going into week 4. And 6 weeks, could be 6 weeks. And he regrets that length of it. I'm not sure that he regrets going in there. I think it's been spectacularly on the military side. We can get into that. Absolutely wonderful. But the politics of it, the explanation of it, I think needs work.
Excuse me, Victor, we have Venezuela and you had the bombing in Iran last year. So it gives this impression of things are done immediately.
What he needs to say is this, just in a parentheses. He said, I didn't say I was against war or conflict. I said I was against endless forever wars. And I'm talking about 20 years in Afghanistan and 10 in Iraq and the 9-month bombing on and off of Libya by Obama. And so when I came in, I wasn't going to say no war because our enemies would take that as Chamberlain-like appeasement and they would take advantage of it. So I had certain rules, opportunistic rules, that I would use mostly, if not exclusively, air power. And I would take out existential threats like Soleimani, who was the architect of anti-American terrorism. And I wanted to get rid of Baghdadi, who had killed Westerners and beheaded them. And then I wanted to bomb ISIS. And I did all of that quickly and abruptly. And then we were attacked by the Wagner Group. I told my field commanders to reply disproportionately and wipe them out. I think they killed over 200 of them. All of those were not forever. They were one-off. Then I was elected again, and I followed my campaign promises. I went in to Iraq and to Iran in 26 hours of mission, and I bombed the nuclear facilities at 3 sites. And then it was a one-off. I said, "Make Iran great. We'll negotiate." And then I went and got Maduro. We lost no U.S. soldiers. We had some serious wounded, but again, it was one. Now I'm in a much more formidable situation. None of those scenarios involve the specter of intercontinental ballistic missiles, massive drone fleets, terrorist proxies, nuclear weapons. And so I'm going to try to abide by my no forever war. And going in there for 6 weeks, if that's what it takes, is not forever. And I'm going to try to avoid the use of ground troops. Marco Rubio said he wasn't going to use them, if possible. And so that's what he needs to say. It's not going to be 9 months or 7 months or 8 months like Obama did with Libya. So he needs to say that. And then he needs to reiterate what he said on March 1st and March 20th. He said we had certain agendas, and that was to get rid of the nuclear threat. He needs to get the fissionable material if he can get it. The ballistic missile drone threat, he's working on that. The proxy subsidies to Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas, I think he's pretty much will finish that. And then to stop the anti-American killing and terrorism of Iran and as a threat to the stability of the Middle East. And I think he's empowered not just Israel, but vis-a-vis the Gulf states. They will be armed. They will rearm very quickly to the degree they haven't lost any of their offensive capabilities, and Iran has. And then regime change, and he can say, he never said I'm going to go in there and throw out the government. He said help is coming. Sometimes in moods of enthusiasm, he said we're going to get rid of this guy or that guy, and he just needs to say ideally the threat will end when the regime is gone. And I have tried to do my best within the confines of not engaging in a forever war to empower the resistance. And I think the destruction that we in the Israeli Air Force have done to Iran will help that cause. Maybe not now, maybe in a month, but eventually it has weakened that regime internally, and that was one of my agendas. And I would like to see regime change, but that is not why we are fighting this war. And that's all he has to say. And the other thing about Vance's call was I was a little confused, because I really like J.D. Vance, but when he blames a foreign state for telling his president that the resistance was going to rise up and it would be easier than it was. Well, we have a director of national intelligence. We have the CIA. We have more intelligence agents, greater budget, more assets than does Israel. So you can consult a foreign country, but if everything that J.D. Vance said were true, and Netanyahu called up Trump and he said, look, you got to go in there, Donald. My guys tell me that the resistance is going to just flourish once you get rid of that command. And Trump said, really? Okay. Well, any president, Trump included, then would call up John Radcliffe. What do we have on this? Is this true? Tulsi Gabbard. Is this true? U.S. Pentagon intelligence. Is this true? And there's 17 agencies, and he would call them up and verify it, because it's our sovereign decision. You don't blame a foreign country for offering an assessment that you now post facto find less than persuasive. And anyway, I thought that was kind of inappropriate myself.
Yeah. Even if it wasn't true, Victor, the cause for attacking was that they are at a point where they could create some weaponry that will really harm us.
It's exactly as I said. The point wasn't regime change; it was the U.S. self-interest in stopping 47 years of harvesting Americans, killing them, and having the ability. It was apparently our negotiators said of the ability to make 11 bombs, and then now lying about. We're finding out that they have the ability to hit most European capitals, and perhaps within 2 years or 3 years, us. And since none of them have missile defense, it only takes one nuclear weapon. And so I think, anyway, that I thought that misrepresented, because what Vance was doing was then he was kind of confirming the the left-wing charge that Trump had decided that the primary objective of this bombing was regime change. Because when he says, you said they were going to rise up and help get rid of the regime. Well, that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to denuclearize and defang, and it's working. The other thing, very quickly, I think Vance knows that the bombing of Serbia was 72 days. We didn't lose any airmen, but Serbia was a pathetic target compared to Iran. It was much easier. And we had 1,000-plane NATO alliance flying with us, not just one country. And we lost 2 planes. We lost that F-117 stealthy fighter. We lost, I think, an F-15 or F-16. We haven't lost any combat aircraft at all. The first Gulf War, 1991, lasted 42 days. So we're not, that could be what this is, 42 days. But the U.S. Air Force, if you just not the total losses, because they were much greater than this campaign, they lost 20 dead. We've lost, I think, 15. And they lost 67, I looked that up the other day, 67 aircraft, if you count helicopters and jet aircraft, fighters. We haven't lost any except a logistical plane, So it's been spectacular militarily, but especially in the modern media age, there's 2 wars that go on. There's a military war and there's a political war, and they're not necessarily independent. And in a very sensitive democracy, and if you're a conservative president, it's not going to be like you can bomb Serbia for 72 days and the left wing will be quiet, or you're going to bomb Libya for no reason in a disastrous campaign and the left will be quiet. You do anything and they jump on your back. So they're doing a brilliant job militarily, but politically they have to do a couple of things. They need, one, to say, don't say 93% of the missiles are taken care of, 74%, 88. And then you see a hotel window blown up in a room in Qatar, or you see American base hit, or you see an Israeli town hall hit. It's much better to say Iran is a formidable, large country of 93 million people, 1.5 times the size of Alaska. And we're going to get all of these drones, but they are scattered. They're in special enclaves with regional control, and there's going to be vestigial attacks. And all we can say is the majority of the attacks will cease, but it's going to continue. And that's what we're working on. They need to say that. And they need to talk about other wars. And, this is how long the Gulf War was. This is how long. And we're right on schedule. And then remind people that regime change is a wished-for result, a dividend, but it was not the original. The original agenda was U.S. interest in stopping this rogue country from killing Americans, causing international terrorism, and getting a nuclear weapon with a ballistic missile to deliver to us and our NATO allies. And they need to emphasize that. And when you say we've got 93% of the missiles destroyed, and then somebody says, well, You didn't tell us how many there were. 93% of what? 3,000? That's several missiles that are still there. When you say we've destroyed 100 of the Iranian Navy warships, and that's 95% of it. But then you say, does that include these little kind of cartel high-speed motorboats that drop mines and can be used as suicide craft, or they have a torpedo on them? Because there's lots of them, hundreds of them. They're not very expensive. So I think that they need to emphasize how difficult the mission was and how well they are doing completing it, rather than getting defensive and saying we've almost they gave the expectation there'd be no more missiles by now, or drones, and there will be, because they have kind of a decentralized, kind of like a Borg or a honeycomb. They've got regional commanders everywhere. They're now isolated, and they drag them out, shoot, get back in the tunnel, or they launch them and then they leave the site and go to the next cache. So it's going to be very hard to get all of those. And the same thing with the Straits of Hormuz. They need to say every administration has had a plan to block the Strait of Hormuz, to unblock or free or liberate the Strait of Hormuz. We can do it. But what we're trying to hesitate, we want to do it with the least amount of collateral damage. And that's and then they can say, and this is thematic of what we're doing throughout that country. Because of this resistance, and because we believe, as everybody does, the Iranian people have been captured by this 47-year aberration. If you believe that, you should say that, and then say, we can't hit their water supplies, we can't hit their infrastructure, we can't hit their train station, we can't hit their radio and communications, because your power generation. That will destroy the country. But we don't want to destroy the country. We want to destroy the regime that has captured the country. And that's hard to do. It's not like Germany, where we say, you know what, in Germany, you guys voted for Hitler, and we'd like you to throw him, but you tried to kill him and it didn't work. So we're going to bomb, Hamburg and Berlin, and we'd like to hit targets, but you've got good fighter aircraft, you've got wonderful flak guns, it's cloudy, it's windy, it's impossible, we don't have the technology, we're just going to bomb. That's what the British said. Yeah. You did it to us, we're going to do it to you. Yeah, look at Coventry. Hey, we got one other J.D. Vance thing to pick up at first, yes. Victor. Third one. Well, but Utah and Florida just passed bills to ban fluoride in the water supply. So why are a growing number of states suddenly doing a massive U-turn on fluoride when they've been adding it to our water for the last 80 years? Well, RFK Jr. has been warning us about fluoride for a while, and the government now admits to the fact that fluoride is linked to lower IQ. In a study done by JAMA Pediatrics, one of the top medical journals, scientists found that the fluoride levels over 2 milligrams per liter of water caused more than 2-point drop in children's IQ scores. You've heard us talk about Cove Pure before. It's a water filtration system that sits on your countertop. If you're watching this podcast, you can see it over my left shoulder. I have it in my office. You don't have to drill any holes or call a plumber to set it up. You just fill it with tap water, plug it in, and it gets straight to work. Their Clearwave reverse osmosis technology is lab certified to remove up to 99.9% of impurities in your water, anything that is in water, meaning fluoride, arsenic, and forever chemicals. All of that gets filtered out, leaving you with pure water. And let me tell you, once you try Cove Pure water, you're never going back. It's the best tasting water I've ever had. Actually, I say it doesn't taste at all. It's just refreshing. It's refreshing. The water we have here in Connecticut, Victor, you think you're drinking out of a Clorox bottle. Anyway, plus what I love about Coke Pure is it lets you have water exactly the way you want it, whatever temperature you want. Just push a button, cold, hot, warm, whatever. If you happen to like fluoride, that's totally fine. There are tons of ways you can get that through toothpaste or mouthwash. But the government should never force you to ingest it. So take back your right to choose. Click the link in the description box, covepure.com/VDH. And for a limited time only, you'll get a special discount of $200
off Cove Pure. Again, that's Cove.
Okay, I apologize for the commercial here. I'm going to take a break because Mr. Papa Panda is having a crisis. It looks like we lost our panda after all. He decided to take off on us. Where'd he go? All we have left is the real panda, picture of the real panda. Oops, I'm going to move him around. Yeah, Papa Panda decided he needed to sign up for some bureaucratic government online, bullshit. So what does that mean? It basically means we have to go through a 20-minute process of identifying who he is. So I think for that reason alone, I've gone 36 minutes. I'm going to have to come back. I was interested in what Victor Davis Hanson was talking about, so I can re-watch my video stream. And in the meantime, appreciate everything you guys do. As I said, you can always sign up. I know you don't give a shit, and I don't give a shit, and it's all worth nothing anyway, so that's just the way it is. Welcome to my world.